Hello everyone, I'm that 3D guy, and before starting this video I'd request you to please press the subscribe button and also press the bell notification icon so that you do not miss any future videos. Before starting this video I'd also request you to please check the previous video of this part of this series, the laying of the canvas and how you set up the bounding box around the iPhone, so that it's easier for you to progress in the video. Like you can follow up and you can understand what's actually going on in these videos. So let's begin with the video. So if you see, when I finished the video yesterday, it was okay for me because it was just laying of the canvas and starting out explaining the introduction of the model which we were going to do. But when I actually looked onto the surfaces, they were not as easy as it seems, right? It looks quite beautiful. The object is very beautiful because it has a bulge on all the sides, right? Especially these planes are okay, these are flat, but when it comes to the edges, you can actually feel that the edges are very flowy when using an iPhone, right? That's the major selling point of an iPhone, is its in its design, is that it looks premium. And the premium feel is not just by the materials they use, but also by the surface or the level of surfacing they do on it, right? So if you see over here, it's quite bulgy. It has a crown on it, and it has a very distinct crown over here. This is the level which we need to which we need to try to achieve, right? This is the level which we need to try to achieve, and this is possible. It's quite tricky, but it's still possible, right? So we'll see how we'll be able to achieve it. So we'll take one step at a time, and as said, maybe in 3 to 4 more parts we'll be able to finish it. So I switch on the model over here, and if you see, it's quite symmetrical. So one thing that comes into mind when modeling any mechanical object is most of them are quite symmetrical, right? Over here, if you see, the base body of iPhone is symmetrical in 4 different axes, right? In 4 different axes, it's symmetrical. So it's on the negative side as well. On both the negative sides, it's symmetrical, right? So what we'll do is, first we'll just make it like into 1/4 of the whole grid, right? So we'll just pick these 2 points. We'll keep it as it was first. We'll just switch on the control points first. So Control Shift, left click, and it's Control on. So we switched on the control points. You see how there are these points. We just select these points and drag them to the edge of this grid, which is over here. We bring the CVs up as well. We bring them up over here. Yep. Now there are surfaces on this part and this part as well, on the bottom as well. But since we know that it's going to reflect on both the sides, we need to get rid of them as well. So we'll just delete these surfaces. We'll pick these surface, we'll hide the control points. Now we have something like this, but we still don't want these two edges, right? We don't want these 2 surfaces. Sorry, we do not need these 2 surfaces because there's a crown on it, and the crown is like a bulge. So what you say, if it's a crown, it means it's like a bulge. In CAD, it means it's a bulge, right? So what we need to do is, we need to get rid of these 2 as well. We'll pick those surfaces, we'll delete them. We'll come into the orthographic view, and now if we see, there's a dark line over here. There's a dark line over here. We need to bring these surfaces down so that the crown can start from the black parts over here, black line over here, right? That's the point from where the surface is actually starting to have a crown. So we'll again pick the surfaces, Control on, pick the CVs, we'll bring them down over here. On this side, we'll pick the CVs over here and bring over here on this side. So we are actually building each and every part so that we do not have to worry about the final surfaces a lot, right? So now how are we going to achieve this? How are we going to achieve this curvature? So what we need to do is, maybe we can get it a bit more down. If we see on this It's a bit more down, it's somewhere over here maybe. Yeah, this looks okay. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to create a bulge now. And how are we going to do that? We are going to do that by making a skin. So what is a skin? If I talk to you about a skin, it's just joining of the two parts, right? It's just joining of the two surfaces into one single surface. It will just make a surface in between those surface edges. So joining two edges, joining two curves, so it just creates a surface in between, right? If it's a surface, it will, if there are two surfaces, it creates a surface in between those two surfaces. It's a hard edge, so no matter how your surfaces are laid, it will still try to create something in between. So this is just filling off, right? But it's still straight. So what we'll do is, we'll go into query edit history. Now query edit history is nothing but it helps you to go back to where you had left, right? It goes back to where you had left. Maybe you had put up a command, maybe you have given something, okay, maybe I've shifted my surface over here, so I need it back on the previous one. So it's not like undo, but it's like going that changing the parameters again. So it's like going back to the dialog box again to change the parameters. So query edit history, you'll find it in surface edit. No, you'll find it in you'll find it in object edit, query edit, and you just click on it. So first you click query edit and the surface you want to open the query edit history for. Then I told you about the crown, right? So we'll switch on the crown. There's already a value of 0.23. I don't think we need that. Maybe we can just increase it a bit. We can make it 0.25. Yeah, that works. Now the best thing about this is, if you see, just for the demonstration, I'll show it to you. If I switch on the points over here and move it down, you see how it comes down as well? If you see how it comes down as well, that's because it has history. So it's going to change its, according to the surfaces around it, it is going to change its form also. So you do not need to worry when transforming objects. It gives you a message that the history is going to be deleted when it cannot be like changed accordingly. So you need to keep that in mind. But most of the time the history works like this. It's a bit it's quite flexible when you are moving object. You see how it's relatively keeping the curvature same, but also changing the path along which the surfaces are. So we need to have that. That's the reason why history is very important in Alias, and most of the softwares are not very good at handling histories like this. Most of the CAD softwares are, but some of the surfaces which are like related to nerves and stuff like that, they have some bridge kind of a system where you work. This has a different way of working. So yeah, you need to get used to the Alias workflow as well if you are interested in it. Now what we need to do is we need to break the history, right? We'll have to break the history because we need to bring this surface a bit behind. If you see over here, there's a crown starting over here as well. There's a small crown over here as well, or maybe a fillet over here as well. So we need to bring this all the way back over here. So what we'll do is we'll take extend, we'll bring it back over here, just approximately somewhere over here. And the reason why I'm doing this, if you see, it has an offset with this. So we need to keep that in mind as well. It has an offset with this. We need to keep that in mind as well. So if your surfaces look good, but the design intent doesn't match, you'll screw it up anyways. So you need to keep that in mind as well. Now we had again we'll make a skin. We'll use a similar process. We'll make a skin. We'll switch on the crown. We'll flip the direction of the crown over here, and we'll see over here how it goes. Now again, I think it's a bit bigger than what we intended to use. Yeah. So maybe we can just bring this a bit inside. Just bring it a bit inside. You see how this purple line is just going a bit ahead? You just bring it a bit behind. Yeah. And do the same thing with this as well. We'll just use an extend tool. So extend tool, you can find it over here. It's there in object edit and extend. You just go over here, extend, and bring it over here. Yeah. So you just bring it a bit below over here, and yeah, just set it up over here. So you see, we need to work around how to achieve this radius over here. That's the important thing of this video. That is what we have to achieve today. So now what I do is, how I am going to achieve this thing. That's the main issue. We have gotten quite far over here. We have been able to achieve something like this, which looks kind of, it's having the same design element to it. The only thing which we need is this one, and that's the trickiest part in this video. So that's the part where we need to focus the most, right? What we'll do is, we'll make a curve over here, like a 5-degree curve. We'll make a curve over here, a 5-degree curve, right? So we'll just snap it across. I told you how to slide objects. It's Control Alt, and if you see, it's sliding over here on this. Control Alt and slide it over here. Control Alt and slide it over here. I have a 5-degree curve over here. I'll go to object construction. For me, it's object construction, or it's maybe for you, it's somewhere over here. There's an align tool. So if you want, you can go into the align tool, which is there in object edit, right? It's there in object edit. So align, click over here on the left part of the object. It's G2 aligned. We need the curve to be G2 aligned with the edge of the surface. So edge of the surface also, you can align the curves, right? So you can just align this and align this over here. So we have something like this, which looks quite reasonable for now. Maybe we can play around with the curvature a bit. Maybe bring it down a bit, play with it a bit, so that it looks. We can also play with this. So if you see over here, if I bring this back, how the curve is moving, right? The curve is changing its direction accordingly, right? So we need to keep that in mind as well. So I am trying to adjust this so that it matches the offset of this, because obviously the camera is going to be somewhere over here and it's going to have an offset with this. So we do not need, we should not mess that up, right? So we have something like this. Maybe we can play around with this as well a bit. Yeah. I can also see the curvature comb for this, which is over here, and I go into the curva, which I showed you in the previous lessons, and I'll check the curvature hue. And I'm not happy with this curvature comb. I'll try to play around with this as well. So if you see, I'm trying to play around with it a bit so that I can get my desired values. Somewhat like this, but obviously it's bulging a lot, right? It's bulging a lot. Maybe we can try to push it in a bit. Yeah, you're getting somewhere over here. In Alias, if I give you if I tell you something, it's always going to be the game of trial and error, right? It's always going to be the game of trial and error. So it's something like this. I think it looks okay. It looks fine. We'll just take this curve. We'll copy it across on the other side as well. because it's quite symmetrical, right? So we do not need to worry about the curves and stuff like that. Now what we'll do is we'll pick these curves, we'll pick the edges of these surfaces, and we'll hide unselected. So we'll go in object display and go into hide unselected. Now we have just these points to worry about. We do not have anything in our scene right now because we just need to focus on this. And there's one new tool which I'm going to show you is square tool. So if you open the square tool, anything in surfacing or maybe even polygonal models, it's very good to have quad objects, right? It's very good to have polygons. So if you have more polygons, like if it's four-sided polygon, it's okay, like a square. But if it's more like a pentagon or hexagon or something like that, it's not recommended, right? So there's an option in Alias where you can have a square to be made, right? So you need to have exactly 4 edges for that. Here, if you see, we have exactly 4 edges, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So exactly we have 4 edges. We'll just square. We'll keep it in G0 position for now. So we have the square option ready here. We'll keep everything in G0. G0, G0, G0 is continuity. G0 is the continuity, right? Yeah. So you see there was a small gap over here because of which it wasn't detecting. I think it should detect now. Yeah, it detects now. So something like this. Now you'll see there's a positional failed continuity, and the reason is because this is 3 by 5 degree. So if I switch on the control points, you see there are 3 partitions over here, but on the curve we had 5 partitions. It's better to match the partition of the curve with the partition of the surface when you are building it, right? So we'll go into the query edit history for this. We'll extend it till over here. We have 5 by 5 and it is showing us G0 position. But here we want G2 continuity, right? We need G2 continuity. So what we'll do is we'll push this 4 into G2 curvature. You see how it's making a bit weird kind of a feel to it. We don't want that. So what we'll do is we'll make it collinear. And what collinear does is it brings all these CVs in relation to this one. Now one more thing which I wanted to see is that it's 5 by 2 over here, which I'm not very happy about. So I'll just increase it to maybe 4 or 5. I'll just keep it a 5 by 5. This works so that you can see it clearly what happens when I disable the collinear option. It goes haywire, right? The surface goes haywire. As soon as I bring it, it comes in line with this. So it tries to achieve continuity in a much better way. The same thing we'll do over here. This is 2 by 2. We'll try to make it 5 by 5. And then again try to query edit history for this. Collinear with this. There's a collinear option over here. Collinear with this. And in the second option, we'll just make it G2. You see, we are able to achieve G2 over here. We weren't able to achieve G2 over here because obviously if we, yeah. So sometimes it's better to switch off the explicit control option as well. So sometimes it's better to switch off the explicit control as well. With explicit control, all the control goes into your hands. With explicit control on, all the control comes into your hands, but when it's off, the computer takes command of all the CVs where it should be, right? And all the spans, the number of spans it can have. Here we see when we switch it on off, there are no additional spans being used. That means the surface quality is pretty good. We can just switch it on or off however we want. Now if we see over here, we have something like this, right? We have something like this. Now there's one problem with this as well, that the flat surface over here, is extending over here till here, right? We need to get rid of this triangle over here. So what we'll do is we'll use a new tool which is known as project and trim. So there's one tool which uses project and the other tool which uses trim. So what we'll do is we'll project this curve on this, which makes a curve on surface, which can later be trimmed out to make a single surface or maybe 2 duplicate surface or keep surface or delete surface, whatever you want. So we'll just take a surface over here. We'll it's there in surface edit project, and double click on it. We'll project it by view. So whichever view we are in, we'll project it that way. So we'll select this one. It's highlighted now, as you can see, it's highlighted. We'll select this curve, or maybe it's better if we select the surface edge. I think it's better to select the surface edge, and we'll project it, and then use the trim option. So there's a trim option here, and we'll trim it. So we can keep over here, we can discard this, we can divide this, but we want to keep this, so we'll keep this, and it disappears. You see how it disappeared? So this is how it works. Now the same thing goes with this as well. Over here, we need to project again and trim again. We'll use the surface edge over here and trim. Yep. So we have these points over here. Now what happens is, if you see, if I switch on the blueprints, if I go on to object display and visible, it will be visible for us. I still think that okay, maybe we have achieved something. I still think that maybe this can come a bit out, right? A bit out. Or is it still okay? I'm not sure. I think it's okay. Okay. Maybe one more thing what we can do is, we can even try to move the curve a bit. So if you see, if I'm not satisfied with this, I still have control over my curve on how to move it. You see how it's moving? It's changing its direction accordingly. It's still changing its direction accordingly. So that's the best part of Alias, is that you can change it however you want to, right? So we'll keep the curvature comb over here on, and we'll play with it a bit. We'll see if we are able to achieve something which is a bit more convincing. We need to keep in mind that the curvature comb should be symmetrical as well. I'll just delete the locators first. I'll select this curve and then switch it on again. Yeah, this works. So we need to keep this identical, because obviously it's a something like this. It's a very minute gap, but I think it still works. Yep, it still works. We'll delete this part. We'll remove this again. We'll remove this curve as well, because we do not need that curve. And we'll move this again over here. We'll square it with a curve again. Here. Do the same thing again. Keep it 5 by 5. Make 4 and side 4 and side 2 into G2. Again, if you see, it's like this. So we'll just keep boundary 4 and 2 over here. Now it disappears. We are getting G2 curvature on both the sides, and I think we are happy with it. If I go on the top view, I see there's some deviation over here. I still think that this deviation can be changed a bit. If I switch on this, you see how it's bulging a lot over here? That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. I'll show you how we can fix that. Yeah, I'll show you how we can fix that. So what we can do is, first we'll take this and we'll make it into a 3-degree from here. We'll take it over here and make it into a 3-degree. With using explicit control, we'll make it into a 3-degree over here. You're still able to achieve G2 curvature, which is a very good thing. I didn't expect it to be G2 over here, but it works. We'll keep this also G into 3 degrees. So the thing is, I try to achieve the same, I try to keep the degrees same so that it flows linearly, right? It's not changing a lot as well, so we can do that. The surfaces are not changing a lot, but we'll get more control over what we want to achieve, right? So if you see over here, if I switch on the isoang, you see how it's dipping over here. We need something which goes, the line goes straight over here. So what we can do is, we can select this, we can pick CV, and we can try to slide the upper part over here. This is what I'm doing, right? We still keep the continuity over here. And since G2 has been attained already, the only thing we need to worry about that we move it only on this axis. If we keep moving it on this axis, it's not going to affect the continuity a lot, right? So we move it across like this, move it across like this a bit. You see how I am trying to achieve the continuity. I'm also trying to give it a bit of a bulgy look over here. If I go on the top view, you'll see the bulginess has reduced quite drastically. We can still start working over here. We can bring this a bit back. We can bring this a bit back. Try to keep it as straight as possible. The reason we are trying to do this is because the surfaces look much prettier when you focus on all these minute things, right? So the same over here, we are moving it across the lower axis now because G2 has been achieved on this axis. So we'll do that. Yeah, something like this. So if I go on the side view, it looks like this. If I switch on the curvature comb for this, I hope it looks pretty good. Yeah, it looks okay. It looks good. So we have something like this now, right? We have something like this, which looks pretty good in terms of the flow and in terms of, obviously, if you want, you can go as precisely as you want. You can go as precisely as you want. Some people even squish it. They press Alt and Shift, and there's a squishing tool over here. They'll just squish it, right? To see if anything has been lost, right? They move it around, they see if it's okay, and then they just leave it back. So that's how it works. They try to move it around. We tried to achieve this as well, but just by moving these top points over here, we were able to keep the continuity as well, and we were also able to keep this design intent like this. So that's what we need to keep in mind, that we can move any point we want to as long as we are not breaking the continuity and as long as we are not playing around with the surfaces a lot, like maybe not changing the design intent. We are also keeping the reflections, we are also keeping the curvature comb proper, we are also working on different elements at the same time, right? Now if you see, if you look at it, it goes completely straight from here. If you take a look at like this, it goes completely straight from the bottom. We are also able to achieve the design intent which we wanted over here, something like this. Keeping the design intent like this on this. So we are able to keep it like this. Obviously, once we do it, we'll be able to offset it just like this. One more thing, what happens is when you don't have good resolution pictures, just like in this one, we didn't have a very good resolution picture. I'm just going on my instincts, right? I'm just working on my instincts. Okay, this is how the design is. Sometimes with sketches, that happens a lot. When there's a sketch artist, right? He sketches on top of again and again and again. So you don't have a clear idea. You need to pick one of those lines and you need to see, okay, which is working with what. Now just one last thing that we need to do is, before ending this lesson, it's quite a long lesson, but I know that once you do this, you'll at least come to know with the basics, right? You'll come to know with the basics. Which CVs to move what. Obviously you can, we'll go across that as well in the next lesson as well. So if you see, the G2 is still there over here, G2 is still over here. And the only reason why it is because if I move it up, you see how it breaks. So we move it across only on this axis, right? We move it across only on this axis. Or if we are taking this, we move it across only on this axis. This is the G2, this is the G2, this is the G1. You see, if I break this one, there's no tangency being achieved. So that's how it works, right? So this is all the things I knew, whichever CV, whatever I am going to move and how that effect is. Hopefully once you start doing it, you get an intuition of which point to move. You'll get a better, clearer idea of how to work. So one last thing what I need to do is, we have achieved a sharp edge over here. We need to make it a bit smoother. We'll make a surface fillet over here. So right now we were working with raw surfaces. Now we have the surfaces. Now we just need to make a blend in between. So we'll go into the surfaces, surface fillet. We'll pick all these surfaces, right? If it's in tangency, only if it's in tangency it's gonna work. If it's only there in position, it won't work. So suppose if this point, if it would have been a bit up, and if I would have surface fillet over here, you see how it broke? It's not anymore in tangency. So that's not what we want, right? That's not what we want. We want it to be in tangency. It's okay if it's not in curvature, but at least tangency should be maintained. So that's one thing which you need to keep in mind. So yeah, hopefully everything is right. And we'll select now everything and just fillet it. One more tool which I want to show. Okay, maybe I'll show it to you once I make the fillet. I go into surfaces, I go into surface fillet. I click over here. I select, okay, chord, G2 curvature. These elements, these parameters I'm going to talk about more in the coming videos as well. So just check it out once, what I use, and just try to replicate that. In the future videos, I'm going to talk more about each and every parameters as well. So we select all these surfaces over here, 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3, and the fourth one with which we need to have a fillet with, right? I already saw what worked with it. So it was around 2 mm. I press spacebar, keep it on edge align, and we have a small blend over here. It looks pretty good. Yeah. The same over here. One more thing which I want to tell you is, all these fillets you make go into the layer which has already been selected previously. So you need to keep that in mind. Now pick all these surfaces and put it in the model. Again, we'll assign it into the model. Now how, if I switch it off, okay, it's working. So how do I make it symmetry on all the sides, right? How am I going to make it a symmetry? So I'll go into the model layer. I'll go into the layers. Now when I spoke about it in the first lesson, I spoke about how the layers work. So how this is making the layer symmetry for all the all the layers. It's keeping it symmetrical, right? So we'll set the plane for this one. Now if you see, there's a yellow plane over here which is visible. Now we need to change the direction of the plane first. We'll zoom it in a bit until we see a small blue box. Brown box. I don't know if you can see, there's a small brown box over here. You just need to click this and it flips the plane on the other side. Press space bar and it has been applied, but we cannot see it because we haven't applied this layer symmetry from the actual layer it is on. So we go into symmetry, we select the symmetry and it joins. And we have a pretty good reflection flowing. You see how it's flowing? It just goes straight and it dips inside. That is what we wanted to achieve. This is what most of the people will be looking for once they are looking to hire you, is or maybe working on Alias. This is the main thing that they are looking for. If I go over here, if I see the curvature analysis of this, okay, maybe the normals are not switched, so I'll switch on the normals. I'll see the curvature analysis for this one, and you see how it's flowing. It's showing me that the curvature remains constant on this part, and this part. Any point I move from here, it's going to have a negative impact on the whole object, right? So we don't want that. It looks quite unique, it looks quite good, it follows the design intent which we wanted. Now the only last part what we have to do here is reflected on the other side. What we'll do is, we cannot layer symmetry it on two axes at the same time. So what we'll do is, we'll just duplicate it on the bottom. We'll select all the surfaces, move the pivot on the center. We have moved the pivot on the center. We'll edit, duplicate and mirror. Now it's there on the X and Y axis, right? It's there on the X and Y axis. If I move it over here, you'll see we are going to reflect it along the X and Y axis, which is going to be reflected down. So we'll just select all these surfaces, edit, duplicate, mirror, and X and Y axis duplicate. Go. You see how it duplicated? And if I see, it exactly matches how we wanted it to. Yep. So that's how it is. Obviously for the scaling and stuff like that, if you want, it's not a big deal. Maybe some of you might be thinking, okay, this part goes a bit down maybe. So what can be done is, maybe you can just bring it a bit down, right? You can just pick this object and maybe bring it a bit down, extend the surfaces on the top. That's it, it's done. So it's not a big deal, As long as it's a symmetrical object, you can align it later however you want to, right? We have a very good surface over here. And we have the base ready for the iPhone. Yeah. So that's it for today's video, because it's been a very long video, but it was one of the most important topics. It was related to curvature, how you are going to adjust the CVs and stuff like that. If you see this lesson, I'm sure that most of the things in the next lessons which we are going to learn is going to be very crucial for you. We have been able to achieve something which looks very simple, but is one of the most difficult things to achieve as well. Because the curvature comb should look good, the continuity should be attained properly, the surface highlight should look good. So all these things, when it comes together, it forms something like this, right? And this is what most of the designers are actually looking for. So this, if you see, it's just one surface, right? It's just one surface. It's comparatively easier than most of the objects I have worked upon or my colleagues have worked upon. But this is how it works, right? This is how it works. So that's it for today's video. In the next video, we are going to learn how to model the camera behind, how to offset it, how to model the different parts, how to make it a bit more maybe detailed, cut out all these things and maybe give them a smaller fillet, smaller edges, because if you see, there's a glass panel at the back as well. We need to model that as well. Maybe delete the back part, maybe refine those parts and start working again. So all these things we are going to discuss in the next video. This one has been a very big long video. The next video is going to be comparatively shorter, because it has lesser components to work upon. The bigger the surfaces, the bigger the complexities are. The smaller the surfaces, the lesser the highlights can be seen, right? The highlights are very less visible. On these objects, it becomes quite distinct that the highlights are flowing something like this, okay? So it should flow in a straight line. If you see, it's flowing in a straight line. It's quite difficult to achieve all these things in these big surfaces. When the surfaces are small, it becomes comparatively easier. So we look at those things in the next chapter. Till then, see you. Bye-bye.